And we're back. What is going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another panel show. We have got a star-studded panel for you today. We have got Mr. Brian Daigle, Tottenham on tour, on a hiatus, but coming back very, very soon, I believe.
Coincidence, a protest has been organised on the day Brian Daigle is on a panel show? Coincidence?
I don't know. Apparently, flights are booked. He's on the way. But Brian, how are you, my brother?
I am very good. Delighted to be back on a panel show with you two and Sean. Obviously, you haven't spoken to or seen for months. It's good to see him. We may have wildly different views of ownership and other things, but it's always good to see him. Yeah, there is no coincidence, is there, Sim, that protests are arranged and somehow I get a call to join a panel show. And delighted to speak on it. And yeah, flights aren't booked just yet. Not yet.
Yet being the key word there.
Even if you're not there in person, you'll be there in spirit. That's fair to say.
And we got Sean Butler, Spurs Talk Show TV. How are we doing, brother?
I'm good, mate. Good to be back. Good to be back. Brian, Sim, Ben, hope everyone's well. Sorry about the laggy internet thing. Obviously, there's always a challenge with me with this stuff at the moment, so I hope it's not too bad.
Seems all right.
Step in the right direction, Sean. At least we can see your face this time.
Yeah, that's probably not the best thing for most of your audience that don't want to see me too often, so it's fine.
With the wonders of AI these days, you can never be too sure, but I'm sure that is Shawnee.
Yeah, soon just some Korean is going to start coming out of his mouth. All right, let's get into it, because there's actually quite a lot to talk about today, and we are not blessed with the most amount of time, but I want to get into these Romero comments from yesterday first and foremost, and if you guys think it was right for Romero to come out saying what he did. So let's just, for context, read out the quotes. And he says, "The truth is, I would say no comment. But Man City competes every year. You see how Liverpool strengthens its squad. Chelsea strengthens their squad. If one doesn't do well, they strengthen again. And now they're seeing the results. Those things are... Those are the things to imitate. The last few years, it's always been the same people responsible at Tottenham. Hopefully they, the Tottenham hierarchy, realise who the true responsible ones are. And we move forward because it's a beautiful club that, with the structure it has, could easily be competing for the title every year." So initial reactions on the comments, and do you think it was right for Romero to come out saying basically what he has done? Now, I'll start with you, Sean, on this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any problem with him saying what he wants to say. I think that, it's okay to do it. I think that it should be free to speak your mind and not be held accountable or held be prejudiced against you. We live in a world where free speech is supposed to be at the cornerstone. So I don't think there's any issue with him saying what he said if that's how he feels. What I would argue though is what like anything in life, it's always nice to be able to get the inside track from people that have access to maybe detail that we don't have. Everything that we see, everything that we're told is all hearsay from someone else's mouth that doesn't know the truth, and it's always kind of diluted and all that stuff. So it's nice to know someone's truth, but that is all that it is, right? At best, it's someone's truth. It's not the truth. It's their personal opinion. And I think that what you have to therefore do is scrutinise what is their incentives and motivations for saying what they said. And it was only a couple of weeks ago we spoke about Hugo Lloris, and I'll take the same stance with Romero's take as I do with Hugo. Like, it's very convenient for people who are directly employed to provide value on the pitch that justifies their salary, and when it doesn't happen, to be able to point fingers in the direction of someone that largely doesn't explain, doesn't complain, gets on with the job. And for me, it comes back to, like, in those particular quotes there, that particular sentence, like, if the club, I forget the specifics, but he said something like the club is structured in a way that allows us to compete every year for trophy or for the title, right?
He said in the way the club is structured, we should be competing for a title every year.
Right, okay, so on that basis then, if the guy who's truly responsible is Daniel Levy, if that's what we're inferring, then the guy who is truly responsible by the logic of the reason why we can't win a trophy every year is because the players aren't good enough. Well, they have been good enough to get us into a position over the last 25 years where we have the audacity to challenge for a title every year. If that is if the club is set up to be able to provide that, then the same guy that he is pointing the fingers at as not delivering enough is also the same person who is responsible for delivering enough to get us into that position. Because before he came along, we weren't competing for titles every year. We were finishing, 15th.
Oh, I think we lost Sean there for a second.
Is he coming back?
Sean, we've lost you.
Some seasons 10th, 11th. We were an average team in the Premier League.
Is he back?
I'm not sure what's going on there with Sean, but I guess he was alluding to that Daniel Levy has got us to a point where, we have been considered as title challengers, particularly under the Pochettino reign. I mean, the way I look at it, let's get into Brian first, then we can get into what we think. But Brian, what's your kind of take on that, on what Romero's saying?
So, do you know what? I'm actually glad, because I was going to mention it, that Sean mentioned the Hugo Lloris one, because I was in the studio with you both when we did the Hugo Lloris thing. And obviously, when I first heard it, I did what I do and go heavy on. Here we go. It's someone calling Levy up, brilliant. But when you do take a step back on it and you look at, like we said, like Sean mentioned and like others mentioned, the way his career ended was bitter with Hugo, with what happened at Newcastle. He went down. Was it a player just lashing out? Now he's gone and we didn't win anything. And he's well within his right, but it wasn't as clear cut as I really thought it was when you take a step back. This one, I think, is different. This one, I think, is different. Yes, we know he's calling out. And Sean just mentioned about Levy having the players, and we have been able to compete. But not wrong there. We have competed, but then when we've had the chance to compete, we've then fallen away. When we're at our top, when we've been at the top and really ready to push on for that, not just be in the mix, but seriously be in the mix, we've dropped back and we've regressed, and then we've rebuilt again, and then we've sold them and we've gone back. And we've lived in a world recently where we've wanted the club to be more communicative, whether it be Lange or Paratici, whether it be Levy, whether it be Munn, whether it be the manager, whether it be whoever. But it's never really fallen on the players because we just don't think it's going to happen. They use their social media for what they feel, and so do broadcasters when they get these snippets. And I think it's refreshing to hear a player talking about it, in all honesty. We all say it, whether you agree with where we are as a club and what the main problem is. Obviously, people know my stance very, very clear where I stand. But this is a current player talking about it. And not just a current player, part of the leadership team, the so-called leadership team, a World Cup winner, a Copa America winner, someone who plays. I heard you, both you and Sim talking about yesterday, Ben, when you were saying he goes away on Argentina and plays with the creme de la creme, and then he comes to Tottenham, and unfortunately the kind of players aren't around that he plays with of that elite quality to win. So I think there's. I'm happy he's come out and spoken about it. I really am, and I wish more players. And I'm not just talking Tottenham. We all want to hear more about our football teams and what's going on. And I think it's refreshing to hear Romero come out and say it.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And I guess back to what Sean was saying. Daniel Levy. Whatever criticism or praise that you want to give him, from where the club that he took over back in 2001 to what the club is now, is a completely different kettle of fish, right? We're on a different kind of stratosphere to what we were fighting on back then in the 90s and early 2000s. Having said that, you look at what he built and where we got to in the Pochettino era. Ever since then, it's been nothing short of a shit show since Pochettino left the club, which is the reality. And he's got to take a lot of blame on his hands. And I think I agree with you. I think it's a breath of fresh air when you hear players, particularly of Cuti Romero's stature within this squad, coming out and talking about that. He clearly feels like the team need more and the team need to progress year on year. And I feel like he doesn't think that's happening. And that's a clear indication of, the blame pointed to in that direction of the hierarchy.
I've got
on,
just,
Sean.
just quickly, just quickly. I don't know how much how much I was talking to myself or before I cut out.
It
But
cut off when you said before Levy came, we were finishing between 15th, and I'm sure you're going to say 10th or something.
yeah, right, yeah. So obviously, Ben's point summarised it there. Like, obviously, we have made leaps and bounds forwards. I do 100% agree with Ben and with Brian that I think it is valuable to hear these insights from players, because I think that it's nice to be able to get access to their opinions, but I think you have to treat them and scrutinise them for the motivations of why they're saying what they're saying, similar to Hugo Lloris. I do think that there are, not agendas, but there's opportunities. It's human nature to sit there and say, if I'm part of the system that is paid a hell of a lot of money to be able to reproduce success or to find it, then if it hasn't happened, if it's reasonable to expect the success to be there and it hasn't happened, then is there any chance that I can point a finger in a direction that doesn't land it with being my fault more than I think it is? Because everyone's going to find a reason to back themselves and to justify their own efforts. And I think that, with the Levy thing, yeah, for sure, there are massive amounts of mistakes. And I do agree that there's been a regression in the last 5 years. But what I would also argue is that the biggest relevant factor as to why we haven't had success is the same reason why Aston Villa hasn't had it, Nottingham Forest, Everton, everybody apart from the 5 teams that have won 90% of trophies since 2001. And of those 5 teams, it's 2 teams that have won 70% of them in Chelsea and City. And what is the common denominator there? Not that I think common denominators are, the rational kind of excuse for explanations of things that are very complex in nature. And football success is an incredibly complex bucket of variables. But for me, that Abramovich, if anything, is the person that spoilt the broth because he got in before there was any kind of attention given to money in football, set themselves up, spent money, had a different approach to profitability, a different relationship with money, and went about it in a way that then allowed others to come and do the same. And then they try to close the door after the horse has bolted, which essentially protects that top 5 more than it does help them. And the guys that came in Chelsea's case after the fact with Bowley, they had this very unique opportunity to take advantage of the circumstances with the Russia thing, where they had to sell and write down debt of £1.5 billion, and that allowed him to kind of throw that money into the investment bucket by hiring clever lawyers to find wiggle room. And ultimately, that £1.5 billion he would have spent anyway on a real valuation of Chelsea that he didn't have to pay because of the Abramovich situation. So this notion that Daniel Levy is responsible for everything within Tottenham, he of course is a massive influence, and he's made bundles of mistakes, especially in the last 5 years. But is he ultimately responsible for the lack of trophies? I would argue that when you're listening to Christian Romero, if you want to look insularly, then he takes a share, but so does Romero, and so does all the other players that are paid a fortune to provide it. And we are better than where we are currently. Our squad is far better than where our current position lies. And so it's like everything in life. The blame should be a pizza pie. Everyone gets a slice. Depending on the size, is depending on your take on how influential Levy is.
I would say yes. I would agree with you that the squad is a lot better than what it's showing right now, and we should be probably around 5th or 6th, looking at the squads in the Premier League right now. But when you look at the regression that has been shown since Pochettino and since having one of the best teams in the Premier League, and over the course of 2 years, best goal difference, best goals scored, least goals against, best defence in the league, like. The squads that Romero has been part of have never been built for success. That's the reality. And when you're looking at what Christian Romero is saying, that's what he's alluding to. And I don't see why, he's wrong in what he's saying. I think his statements are completely factual. And one of the big reasons why the squads haven't been built for success since that time, since Cuti Romero has been at this football club, has got to be down to the hierarchy. I don't know who else it could be down to.
Again, it comes down to like how big of a gap was there between what we had and what success looks like. And if he's talking about lifting the title, then the gap was massive. Right, because the people that were lifting the titles were the beneficiaries of the Sheikh money or the Russian money long before the rules came in. They set up the multi-club ownership. They had all of the kind of ecosystem put in place that allowed them to become masters of that ability to deliver constant success. If you look at the transfer policies of Manchester City, though, there's loads of mistakes in there. But it's a common denominator that mistakes happen in life. If I get out of bed every day and I make less mistakes than I'd make good decisions, then it's a good day for me. So this idea that you have to be infallible or flawless, I think is a stretch. And I would also say that the gap between where we were when Romero joined and what we need to be to deliver constant success was a big one, and one that can't really be found if you're living within the rules. And I don't think that Daniel Levy should be chastised for expecting the Premier League to adhere the rules as they see fit or create rules that are supposed to be fit for purpose. And we've seen with the FFP and the City debacle and all of the other things that they go after the low-hanging fruit like Everton and Forest for minor infractions, but they leave Chelsea well alone for doing crazy things around hotel loanings and third-party lending, sponsorships, and what Abramovich was doing with his ex-PA. All of that stuff was beyond the realm of the lawyers at the FA to be able to figure out. And I think that that's almost blaming Daniel Levy for coming second in the Tour de France to Lance Armstrong and blaming him because he didn't cheat. I think that you have to at some point hold some of the other parties accountable for why the gap is what it is. And it's not because it's been a level playing field and Daniel Levy's just made more mistakes than everybody else. It's because the dice has been loaded and the table has been slanted in certain directions for far too long. And that stuff isn't acknowledged enough by people that are angry with Daniel Levy.
Sure, let me just
go on, Brian.
Let me just say one thing very. What I will say that, sure, where you raised some good points. What I will say, it's all well and good using Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool, the money that Spurs don't prepare properly. They lose Kyle Walker, sell him for 50 million. It takes 5 right backs and 100 million to find the replacement. You sell Harry Kane for obviously. I'm not getting into that, but he's cut the route. Where's a world-class striker? Or you're not going to get near Harry Kane, obviously. But there have been plenty of opportunities where rebuilding. We as you know, the Kyle Walker one I always use. It was actually the Irish Hotspur that said it. But you look at it, we spent over £100 million to replace a £50 million player, and we've done that over the pitch so many times. That's not Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool's fault. That's bad recruitment. That's on the recruitment team.
100%, mate. 100%.
It's all we can say, like you said. Chelsea and Liverpool, Man City, they have all the money in the world, and Manchester United, the revenue they pump, obviously is different to what we've had in the past before the game changer. But there has been shocking recruitment.
100%.
There has been shocking hiring and firing from Levy, direct, the whole way down. So it's 6 and 1 of half a dozen the other way you look at it on that way. Sorry, Sim, that's all I want to say, bro.
Yeah, all I was going to say is I think Romero's just commenting probably, obviously before he's come here, I don't think he knows the in-depth history of Tottenham and how they've done and everything like that. Obviously, he knows we got to a final and he probably is aware of the Pochettino team, but obviously he's probably not aware of the minutiae of what we are in terms of what Brian's talking about. We didn't replace this guy, that guy 5 years ago, whatever it is. He's probably just commenting on what he has seen since he's come to the club. And since he's come to the club, he obviously came under Nuno. We sacked him after 10 games. We brought in Conte. We were going well. And then, Conte wasn't given the full backing probably in that second summer in terms of really improving that back line. It wasn't really set up to progress. We then ultimately he ended up losing his job. We now got Ange. Clearly Romero says he likes Ange, and clearly it seems as at the moment that the squad are behind the manager. They like the way they play football, and then in the summer we didn't do enough to really improve the squad and push on, and we only really got Solanke. So he's probably sitting there very frustrated with the situation that he feels like. Apparently he didn't like Conte, but they finally got a manager that he says he likes, and apparently the playing staff are behind. Yet they probably feel like they haven't been given the full tools to push on from last season, and given this injury crisis, they're relying on teenagers to come in, do jobs for Spurs when they're looking at Chelsea, who are bringing on Madueke off the bench, and bringing all these players, and that's who they want. That's where they want to be. They want to be up there competing with these kind of teams. They want to be up there challenging for big honours. And I'm sure what you're saying, Sean, is absolutely right. When it comes to, we can't blame Levy for not cheating and all that kind of stuff. And there has been financial dope from City or Chelsea, but these players are not. They're not accountants. They don't really care about that stuff. Yeah, and these players just see the playing field and feel like we're lagging behind because of where we are with the squad. And I think another interesting point of these quotes is, first of all, do we think this is potentially him coming out with these kind of quotes as a pretense to engineer a move in the summer?
100%, mate. That's what I mean. Yeah, what's the motivation there? You've got to scrutinise why they're saying it, who's saying what, and why they're saying it. If they're an insider, and with Romero, there's a lot of reason to think that there's some manipulation of what. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Carry on.
No, it's fine. I think I am going to pose it to everyone. Do we think that's the case? And also, obviously Romero's saying this. I doubt he's saying this as a lone voice in the squad. I'm sure they will discuss this kind of thing, and I'm sure that this is probably a common or belief in the squad, amongst the squad as well. So could this belief permeating within the team be leading to a loss of belief, not potentially in the manager, but in the club itself, within the squad? And that's maybe why we're not seeing the results that we should be. Could that be part of the problem? Go on, Shawnee.
Look, I mean, it's a reasonable take, right? But I think that, just for what it's worth, I think that Romero is massively overrated for what he actually delivers versus the level in which people perceive him to be because of his resume carrying a World Cup. I don't think he's one of the top defenders in the world like people thought he was going to be. I think he hasn't materialised. And look, if he wants to disappear, if he wants to go, I'd be the first one to say for the right price, it will take advantage of the reputation that exists about this guy that doesn't really match up to what we see as fans, in my opinion. And I would happily sell him for the right price if we had confidence that we could go and get a player that's a better fit for this system. And there's plenty out there if you're gonna stick with Vange. But in terms of the wider point around, is there potentially some sort of murmurs around, being at Tottenham Hotspur, you're going to be the bridesmaid but never the bride because of the gap between those that have and those that don't? I think it's plausible, but look, at the same time, how many of our squad realistically are going to break into the Manchester City team? I'd argue not many. How many of them are going to break into the Chelsea team right now? I'd argue not many, but for what it's worth, we were all laughing at Chelsea last year because they were so poor. But where they are now, what they're starting to deliver is absolutely the bare minimum of what you should expect when you've dropped £1.5 billion in 24 months on some of the best young talent out there. Now, in terms of if there is a concern around, are these players all talking about, are we ever going to win anything meaningful as a Tottenham player? Probably not. Then there's two things I'd say. One is, well, how many of these players, as I said, are going to be able to get a command, a role in a team that's more likely to win? There's only 5 of them in the Premier League, and probably in other leagues, there's usually less than 5 teams that win anything anyway. So how much opportunity is there out there to have more consistent success? And I think that's the biggest part to remember here, that success in football is unusual, right? If you are the average team, you don't win. You very, very rarely win, ever, right? So this idea that a season without a trophy is failure, I think it's a very strong word to use. It might be black and white to some. I think it's a shade of grey for me. And I would argue that there's other players out there that we could always attract a lot of good talent to Tottenham. It's about what Ange says, and I completely agree with him on this note. I just don't think he necessarily backs it up with what we see on the pitch. But he thinks that the difference between the best at the very best and the level just below it is not technical, it's mentality. Right, and that it's about your willingness, your ambition, your effort, your adaptability, the presence, and you can have an argument and go again. All of those little things that you can't really judge an 18-year-old on because they haven't really developed their brain yet and they haven't gone through the temptations of early success and see how they get through it. So I don't understand, first of all, why Ange is such a big dominant force around mentality and then is okay with a transfer policy where you're basically buying potential, not proven resilience. That's a bit of a concern for me. But on top of that, if he is such a mentality monster driver, then really the team that we have, they are good enough technically, but all they've shown so far for me is a lack of willingness to get the job done. And against Chelsea, which was a big litmus test to see where we stood, we kind of fell apart in the second half. And that to me shows that whilst we do have technically gifted enough players, I don't think we have the mental side of it. And those players are not going to do well enough at Chelsea or City or anywhere else if they really think that Tottenham aren't going to create success. Are they really going to get in a place in the better teams? I don't think so.
Yeah, but it's the model, right? It's the model in which we work with that won't bring success, and it won't ever bring success. You look at, forget Man City and Chelsea for now, right? Man City and Chelsea are a bit of a different kettle of fish, but just look at Arsenal and Liverpool, right? In what the same stages as they were in our projects or when we had Pochettino. Liverpool, when they were knocking on the door, when they needed extra investment, when they needed to push on to the next level, they went and bought the best in class in the positions that they needed. They went and bought an Alisson, they went and bought a Van Dijk, they went and bought I can't remember who else, but top players in those specific positions. Pardon?
That wasn't with chairman money, that was with club built money.
But they weren't exactly successful, Liverpool, at that moment in time.
No, but they sold the world record player, right, for 120 million quid.
We just sold Harry Kane for 100 million.
Right, but they didn't need 19 players, a 22-man squad rotation done in 24 months. They only needed a couple of players to fill into an otherwise steady squad that was pretty much foundationally solid through a wonderfully resilient youth system and a good setup around them.
Salah and Mane didn't cost 100 million.
Since when Klopp came in to Klopp's actual team that he started winning stuff with, it was completely different. Like, it was a whole completely different squad. You're not talking about just one or two players. I'm talking about when they just wanted to kick on to the next level.
But how long? How long
2
did that
years.
Listen, what I'll add to this, Fred, because we've gone away from Romero and onto money, and it's amazing when I'm on here how it gets to Levy and Sean, how we get to Levy so quickly.
Well, Romero brought it up. So
you look at it. Sean just mentioned before, if we got a fee for Romero goes. Yeah, I don't trust Tottenham Hotspur to find the right defender first time. I don't expect them to spend all the money. You can talk about, we can mention Liverpool, and Sean's right with the Coutinho money. It was Coutinho 140 mil, bang, bang, but they did that. We don't. Arsenal, if you want to talk about the filth, the one that really irks me and gets to me is Arsenal didn't have Champions League for 6 years, and all of a sudden they can smack down 100 million for Declan Rice. With no Champions League money, none of the concerts, none of the events that we do. Yes, there's the debt, whatever. That's the difference. And again,
Brian, you can't skip over that part, though.
No, I'm not skipping over that.
Yes, there's the debt and whatever, but yes, there is the debt.
No, I'm actually going back to defend you and say they only needed one player and they went and spent it, but they got that money without having, but without the concerts, the money that's coming in. Yes, I understand there's debt. I don't dispute that, but when Arsenal haven't had that revenue that we've had come pumping in with Champions League money as well, they've gone and spent £100 million on a Champions League player. When we were in the Champions League, did not sign Champions League players. We bought players that can play in the Premier League. There was no Champions League elect standard player that we signed with the revenue that we brought in. We again went quite, and you're right, Sean, we needed a massive rebuild. There is no denying that. But I've always said, if you're going to buy a few lumps of coal and hope they turn into a diamond, you need a couple of diamonds in there to show them the way.
Right, but isn't that part of the process, though, Brian? Isn't that like, let's be honest, of the squad now versus the squad when Ange took over, or in the last part of the Conte era, think about how much Deadwood we had on loan, how much we're trying to get rid of, how much of the part of that removal of the old we're through, and we've gone after these youth players. Now, obviously, you're not going to get everything right with the youth approach. I don't personally subscribe to. I say it every day. Like, we've got more 18-year-old talent than the hub, right? It's too much of an expectation on these guys to be able to carry that weight of expectation that Tottenham fans hang on every single manager and every single player. The pendulum's gone too far in one direction, both managerially and the philosophical approach, and also the age profile. To me, you do now need to drip in some experienced leaders, but I would argue that. The idea of when was the £100 million player going to happen, I don't think it's possible realistically to expect them to do that whilst also filling 7-8 players in every window where you can, or every summer window where you can. Let's hope that the majority of the youth that we've got does mature into the players that we paid the value for, right? The Bergvall at 10 million, when you compare him to 40 million or whatever it was for Archie Gray, let's really hope that you're paying for a guy in Archie Gray that does have the minerals to cut onto that next level. But if you do, if you get most of those right, then in a summer's time where you don't need to buy 7 players, you only really need to improve here and there, like what Liverpool were in back when they signed Alisson and Van Dijk. I think that you should then be able to expect all of this concert money, all of this, distribution of responsibility of revenue generation away from Tottenham fans, all of that stuff, which should be applauded, by the way. There's not another chairman in the Premier League who gets as much revenue from sources that are outside of their own fan club than he does. But all of that stuff should be able to put us in a position where when you only need 1 or 2 players, then you can spend 100 million quid. And
wasn't that the case in the summer, though, Sean? Wasn't that the case in the summer just gone?
No.
If that wasn't the case, then why did we fill the squad with 4 more 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds and 1 Dominic Solanke?
Because we still need even right now, we still need a left back cover. We still need a goalkeeping replacement at some point. We still need a left-sided centre back. We still need a number 6, and we still need a left winger.
And we needed them in the summer, and they didn't come in.
But that's what I mean. But you can't you can't spend £100 million on 5 players. So if you're doing it on 1 player, then you're going to have to like sacrifice somewhere else. And at the moment, it's a case of trying to elevate the kind of, when the tide rises, it lifts all ships. You're trying to elevate the general basic level of the squad, which I think has been achieved. And I hope that at some point in the not too distant future, we'll be in a position where that you don't need wholesale changes every summer. You only need 1 or 2, and then you hope that this financial Goliath that the stadium has become should put us in a position to be able to compete financially with the Arsenals and the Liverpools and everybody else. If it doesn't happen, then obviously I'll be very critical of the whole process then. But right now, I think that it's still we haven't got to that position yet, personally.
I mean, do you not think we should be in that position already? Like, the stadium, I know we're paying off the stadium still, but it's a very long-term debt with short payments, low interest every single year. You're looking at the money that we're spending. We're spending a lot of money, but we're not spending it right, in my opinion. And then still, you're looking at the wages compared to the people that we should be fighting with, everyone that you've mentioned, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, Man City. Chelsea and Man City, obviously financial powerhouses, but the other two, they're on almost double the wages that we're spending. Aston Villa, probably around the same amount of wages that we're spending in terms of per year. Do you not think that we should be doing more than that?
I mean, it's an argument, but I don't think of the total squad cost spend is the way you should think about it. You shouldn't think about it in, I know that it's distributed out that way for the purposes of like consumption for those that don't necessarily want to understand it in detail. But having a 50% of your revenue spend on salaries is actually beneficial for many reasons. But you should ultimately think of if you can do it, you should be ultimately thinking about the distribution, the dilution of those numbers over the course of the contract, including the bonuses and including agents fees and including the transfer spend. And it gets more complicated when you do it that way, but when you do it that way, we're actually far more like the difference, the gap that you're talking about that exists in salary caps and salary spend is not anywhere near as vast as you think it is when you bake in all of the other variables that come into your squad cost ratios, and the gap is far closer. Now, is there an argument to say we should be spending more money? Yeah, if that is truly the difference why we can't attract a player that we want. But I don't remember. Can you name me? I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't. I just can't think of them right now. But can you name me 3 or 4 players that we have realistically had the opportunity to sign that we lost out on because we didn't pay the guy as much money as the guy that did buy the player
Sure,
in the last 12 months?
I can flip that the other way and say, is there a single player since we've moved to the stadium that we couldn't have signed at White Hart Lane and put on the wages? Because yes. I don't think there's a single player that Tottenham Hotspur.
Every single player that we have, right, mate. We were spent in the 5 last years, the last 5 years of our time between 2015 and 2019 at White Hart Lane. We were spending £15 million on average per season. Net spend 15 million. We're now spending 110. That's a 5-fold increase in our net spend annually in the 5 years since versus the 5 years prior. So this idea, when people say we were promised that the stadium was going to be a game changer, it has been a game changer in our ability to spend money. The only thing that has happened at the same time is ridiculous inflation in the value of the players. Archie, £40 million 10 years ago would get you a top 20 player in the world. Now it gets you an 18-year-old who happens to be English or happens to be homegrown and who hasn't kicked a minute in Premier League football. That's not the owner's fault. That's not Angie's fault. That's not the player's fault. That's just the reality of the situation. But to suggest that the stadium hasn't been a game changer in our affordability is just factually inaccurate, mate. I'm sorry.
Well, you're the finance guy. I've never claimed to be whatever. I just don't see transfer fee wise and wage wise, especially wage wise, because it's gone down, a single player that White Hart Lane couldn't have brought in. Like I said, I'm not going to get into financial details and the things you've shared because you will.
You're talking about quality of player. You're talking about quality of player.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Not value, quality of. Yeah, that's the thing. I've never claimed. Listen, I stand where I stand when it comes to this football club and this ownership and whatever it may be, and I've stood firm and I never will. And I'm very, very hardcore when it comes to how I feel about the ownership. And I look at the football pitch and, like I said, I don't think quality wise or whatever. there has been a player that's come to this football club since we moved to that stadium that White Hart Lane could have attracted.
Well, I mean, look, we never know, right? We're playing kind of playing
It was
imagination here. But I don't listen. I don't disagree. People always think because I'm defending one point, I'm therefore defending every point. I'm not sitting here saying that I think Daniel Levy is a perfect chairman. I absolutely acknowledge that he has made a shed load of mistakes, too many, right? Loads and loads of mistakes with regards getting involved and nitpicking over this, and his negotiation style is not great. He thinks it's brilliant. I think a zero-sum game is a terrible way to negotiate. I very, very, very much hold that against him. I also think that he has the wrong risk appetite to be a football manager. I've said this 1,000 times. People only hear the fact that I don't necessarily agree with all of the Levy outtakes, and I find that there's inconsistencies in the logic of them, which is all I'm really doing is trying to find logic to the consistency. And if there isn't some, I'll call it out because I think that it's imperative to find balance. It's necessary to hear both sides of the argument, and I don't think it's well represented in most other parts of the community. So I try to bring a different side, but that doesn't mean I think that he's infallible, nor do I think that he makes every decision the best for the club. And I 100% agree with you that when we've gone left, we could have gone right and spent the same money and the same wages and got plenty of better players that worked out. And it's not even playing Monday morning quarterbacking, because a lot of the time we all are and have had consensus, all of us, that a certain player would have been a great fit to a Tottenham team. And then we went elsewhere, got someone that didn't work out, and that player did end up going to a different team. Kudos is a great example, who smashed it at West Ham. There's plenty of examples of coulda, woulda, shouldas, and I'm happy to acknowledge them. It just doesn't mean that every part of the Levy out argument is consistent and makes sense, because it doesn't. And there's a lot of misnomers, inaccuracies, and misunderstandings of the things that happen outside of the club that don't get the attention. And I just think it's worthwhile hearing those things occasionally, so that the audience can have both sides of the coin to consider. That's all.
All right, look, let's move on, and let's move on to Ange Postecoglou, because the club, if you want to believe it, from various journalists, Dan Kilpatrick and Matt Law and all these journalists have all come out and said the club are backing Ange Postecoglou through this period, and they will give them every chance to get success of this football club, or to turn it around, let's say.
It's a pretty extensive press briefing for it to not be true.
Look, it could be either true or it could be a vote of confidence. It could be one or the other. It doesn't have to be true. You've seen it before. Every time something comes out in the press, you're like, oh, it's the dreaded vote of confidence.
Yeah, that's part of. I mean, I'm partly being facetious, but I think when a club actively makes a statement, then I think that is something.
The club
to
haven't
worry
actively
about.
given a statement, though.
Exactly. I'm saying that's when to be worried. I'm saying when there's a press briefing saying he's not in trouble, that we're not worried about him, and the players are behind him. I think we have to when there's numerous journalists coming out saying it. Usually this time our players in the squad are not quiet about what they think, about complaining. We usually hear a lot of negativity coming from within the club at this point in a manager's tenure. If we are to be believed that it's the end of it, at this point it's different. I mean, we can't deny that.
It's still up to each and every person to believe what they want to believe, So whether you believe it or not.
Okay, fine.
Look, that's the line of the club. That's the line of the journalists at this moment in time. I'll start with you, Brian. Do you think it's the correct move from Tottenham Hotspur to have that line? Is it right to be backing the manager at this moment in time?
Listen, like Sim said, I don't think this hasn't been official from Tottenham Hotspur. It hasn't been like the good old days where the chairman would come out on Sky Sports News and go, right, listen, we fully back our manager. But I think we're at the point now that I think this is going to change on a game-by-game basis. Should Rangers be a defeat, the speculation and the intensity could get a lot higher. If we lose to Southampton, and you guys will know from travelling the length and breadth of the country, Southampton is forget the whole Conte thing and the last time played there. Southampton has always been a tricky place for us away. It seems to be always a place where we fail to get over the line more often than not. Could it intensify then? Then you've got United in the cup, and then obviously Liverpool. I think this is changing by a game-by-game basis. I have stood by Ange like I have stood by every single manager, but I came on here after the Chelsea game and spoke to Marlon and Amir, and I said, if we look at it, take it away whether you think Ange is the right man or not, football is a results-based business. That's how you keep your job. by getting good results. And at the moment, it's not happening. You've seen all these stats that keep coming out. We've now, since Chelsea, the last 2 games, we've lost more than we've won. All these stats, and these stats come out, and it annoys me that these amount of stats come out, to put it in a bad way. Also, the other way, to shine on it in a good way. I think he's really running out of time. I think if we get a couple of bad results against Rangers and Southampton, I think the club might come out and give him the dreaded vote of confidence. That's my personal opinion. That's what I think Spurs might do. I hope I'm wrong in both the results and what they do, but we'll see.
No, but Brian,
I don't think Spurs ever do that, though. Do Spurs ever do that? Come out and actually give a vote of confidence, like a public statement? I don't think that's Spurs' style.
No, we don't really do that.
I think this is Spurs, like, to do it through journalists. I think that's more Spurs' style.
Maybe. Is it the right thing to do? Listen, it's hard for me to say. Like I said, it's a results-based business. Do you know what? I'm not going to sit on the fence anymore. I will say, yeah, I think it's the right thing to do. I think it is the right thing to do. Like we were just saying about Romero coming out and saying, we want to have more insight of what's going on in the football club, whether it's good or bad. You can't have it both ways. You just want to hear that everything's all champagne and Skittles, or everything is, oh my God, it's all doom and gloom. I think it is the right thing to do. I think it is the right thing to do. If you want an answer, Sim.
You'll probably be surprised what I'm about to say, but I actually agree with that. I do think it's the right thing to do as well, if they're actually genuine about it. Because look, I've had my say on Ange Postecoglou over the past week. I've heavily criticised him a number of times, questioning his future at the club and questioning the direction this club's going under him. But if Spurs, it's inside the club, if Spurs feel like he's the right man for the job, if Spurs feel like, or if the players feel like he's the right man for the job, then they got to stand by their man. But I don't want to hear this coming out and then after a few losses, then say, oh, just sack him. Like if they're gonna stand behind him, then stand behind him in a real way and start backing him realistically and properly in the transfer windows and get him the right tools that he needs for the job. If they think he's the right man for the job, I am questioning that, obviously. But look, I'm not in the background of the club. I don't see the workings in everyday life at Tottenham Hotspur. So I see a lot of flaws in what Spurs doing. I've seen a lot of red flags over the past year. But like I said, if Spurs think he's the right man for the job, then they got to back him. What are you saying, Sean?
I think the idea of sacking him right now is outrageous. I think it's outrageous that we're even thinking about it, if I'm entirely honest. The guy's still in 3 cups. Because we sit 11th in the league and we're still 5 points off of 6th or whatever it is. It's a very tight league. It's very unpredictable. Everyone's leveled up this year. Big teams can beat small teams and vice versa. Yeah, it's one of those things. Right? Is there concerns? 100%. Is there a lack of willingness in the manager to embrace what we are all thinking? No, right? And it's like stubbornness to a T. Like, is he going to die on the hill? Well, probably, right? But in terms of like, are we getting the arrows ready already? I'm not sure we should be. I don't think he's not done anything anywhere near enough. And most of the people that want change all the time, when it doesn't work out, when a new thing doesn't work out, it's not crazy to think that those people that want Levy out are also some of the most likely people that want Ange out, because if Ange goes, if they're pushing that narrative of get him out, then guess what? That's the next opportunity to say it's a clear failure on the part of Daniel Levy, right? Whereas whilst that story hasn't ended, then this process is still ongoing, and ultimately you're still in all 3 competitions at this stage, or that you have any realistic chance of winning. And if people think that we're in a title challenge, like, we're not. Let's be honest, we're not there yet. We're nowhere near being able to be consistent enough. But are we good enough on our day to beat the best? 100%. Are we good enough? Are we bad enough on our day to lose to the worst? 100%. And that is a problem that has to be figured out. It's a mentality thing, and Ange professes to be a monster of the mentality game. So I think you give him enough rope. You let him figure it out. At this stage, what benefit are you going to... Where are you going to go now? If you get rid of Ange right now, where do you go in the managerial market? Who is it that's really pulling up trees? Gasparini in Atalanta? He's 67 years old. He's not going to leave a good thing, right? Where you go to the Luton guy? He turned down 2 other jobs in the summer. Like, There's no reason or rationale in my mind why it makes sense to pull the trigger on sacking a guy because he's had a volatile start to this season. I get it. There's a lot of concerns. I get it that the lack of his embracing of some obvious variety can come across as pig-headed, and I think he's making a rod for his own back in that regard. And I think he makes it very easy to have the finger pointed at him when you don't acknowledge or embrace the idea of change because you're stubborn on that degree. Then I think that you're inviting that kind of pressure. So I think that I understand why people want to go that direction, but I think it makes no sense. We at least give him I think the season, but even if people want to call that too long, you at least let the quarterfinal play out in the cup. You let the finish this round of the Europa League, see where we're at, and the FA Cup, right? And if by February we're out of the competition, we're out of all three competitions, for example, then and the league is still relatively kind of poor, then obviously there's a decision to be made. But again, at the moment there's no plan B in terms of managerial access that I think makes any sense, and I just think it's far too early to call time on this guy. And I think it's outrageous if we do. And those that are calling for his head are all too frequently looking forward to the next time to say another failure by Daniel Levy. So again, analyse and scrutinise the motivations of those that say what they say, because there's always an agenda somewhere. And I think it's too early to call it on edge. I want to figure it out. I really want to figure it out.
Sean, do you feel...
Go on, Ben, you go.
Sean, do you feel he is the right man for the job?
I don't know yet. I don't know. Listen, I want it to work. I would love it if he could break the mold. I 100% think that there is a reality check that needs to happen. That there is a reason why nobody else plays that version of football all the time without any consideration for nuance. And every single manager in world football who happens to be a bit more pragmatic and consider the opposition and where you're playing and why you're playing and how you're playing and who you have available and where there's weaknesses, the SWOT, and all of the fact that he doesn't seem to care about any of that stuff and thinks that he's got a recipe for success in his vision of football regardless, I think is incredibly naive at this level. Maybe at lower levels of football, there's a lack of resources, there's a lack of talent that he was competing against that has the ability to pick that system apart. And at this level, that's not the case, right? In any walk of life, the higher up the ladder you go, the more optimized and efficient the systems are. And I think that you're giving up unnecessary percentage points in your margins of error by not looking to take advantage of other teams' weaknesses or for not considering whether they're going to take advantage of yours. Like, to me, it's madness. However, like I say, so do I have concerns, Ben? I share your concerns, man. 100% I do. 100% I think that it's in all likelihood probably not going to work out, but you don't know yet. I think to sack him before he's even left one competition that you had any chance of winning is just so unfair. You give the guy enough rope and we'll figure it out, right? If he hangs himself with it, so be it. But if he doesn't, and if he goes on and creates a one trophy, right, one trophy, and he becomes the most successful manager in Tottenham's history under Daniel Levy, if it happens to be of a higher profile than the Carabao Cup, and if it's the Carabao Cup, he joins Ramos. And that's 3 games away in the case of the League Cup. 3 games. Manchester United, and then hopefully you get lucky in the semi-final draw. And who knows, we're capable of beating anybody on our day. I just think you cannot sack this guy right now. It's madness to say that you should.
Sure, I just want to quickly say, when you say you got to get, I know a lot of Levy out people, including myself, that
you don't say.
Well known within the community for being where we stand, that have completely backed Ange the entire way. There are a lot of us that have been, we need to manage to stay the test of time. I know what you're saying, I know what you're getting at there, but there are a lot of us.
Of course, mate, Brian, mate. Like, when I say about the Levy, I'm not talking about everyone, man.
I know. I just want to know, because what happens is then it starts getting wires crossed. I'm not saying you and me. I'm saying then it goes out there. You said this.
99% of the people that I stream with are Levy outers, right? All of my friends in the community are Levy outers. I don't have any problem with people that are Levy out. I have problems with people that tell others this is how you should feel, and if you don't do it the way I'm doing it, then that's what I have an issue with. But I don't have an issue with anyone for wanting Levy out. I've got no. I support your protest, Brian. Do you remember 2 years ago? I was like, when you were going to your the deadline day thing, I was telling everyone on my Tottenham walks, go and support them. Go and big up to you guys. It's important that you get your voice heard. But I don't personally see the value in it. I don't think there's a single experience or a single example of a Premier League club that's ever had their owner sell the club directly because of ownership protests. So I don't see the outcome that you guys want at any point other than when Daniel Levy gets his money. But that doesn't mean I don't support the right to do it. I absolutely encourage you guys to do what you want.
Didn't it? Didn't it, Sean? It happened with Spurs with Alan Sugar.
No.
I mean, he spoke about it though.
I know my dad was the stockbroker for that deal, Matt. So I know I know what happened with the Alan Sugar deal. Terry Venables sold his stock via my dad's company and pissed Alan Sugar off to the point where he couldn't buy the stake that Terry Venables wanted to sell, and therefore he lost control, and it went to ENIC in the end via a third party. So it wasn't down to protests; it was down to Alan Sugar didn't have the opportunity to buy the stake that Terry Venables owned, and that forced his hand in a different direction. It had nothing to do with a forced issue.
But I swear I heard an interview with him talking about, people were outside his house protesting and all this kind of stuff, and he just didn't want to deal with it anymore.
He took the price that he got for his. Took the price that he wanted for his club, mate. There's absolutely zero evidence of any direct, I will take a price point that is below market value to get out of this. There's a club. I forget the club. There was a club in. Was it Northampton Town? I'm not sure which one it was. Their owner went to prison for, I'm going to say either tax fraud, embezzlement, or something more sinister. I'm not even going to say it because whatever might get you demonetized. But he went to prison for 5 years, and the entire fan base, get this absolute bozo out of my club. He, in the most disgusting circumstances possible, he still went, I'm only going to go when someone pays me the right money. So it's like businessmen don't.
Same with Mike Ashley as well. That happened with
exactly
Mike
Ashley. There's a never-ending stream of protesters that give themselves a pat on the back when the deal happens and says it wouldn't have happened without us. And I just don't think that's the case. I think that they go when they're ready and when the price is met, and there won't be any different.
Could they be forced to put it on the market though? And maybe if they didn't want to sell, and then they potentially want to sell.
Could they be forced to put it on the market?
Yeah. Let's say a club owner doesn't want to sell. He's adamant he wants to stay, and then he gets pressured by fans outside his house. The horrible things that maybe Alan Sugar went through, and maybe other people have been through, and then he just says, you know what, fuck this. If the right offer comes in, I will sell.
But that's the key part. If the right offer comes in, I will sell. If the right offer comes in with Daniel Levy, he will sell. Right? We know he's looking for investment. He just. I don't think, and listen, look, maybe there's a difference if we saw what happened, not to get off topic, but we saw what happened in New York last week, the healthcare CEO who apparently his company didn't pay the insurance policy of someone's, whatever, and some assassin goes and puts a bullet in his head. So there's obviously, there's circumstances in which I'm sure certain levels of pressure would maybe force the hand, but are we really invoking that kind of activity here, that we should make this thing, you feel that strongly about Daniel Levy that we should take measures to a level where he's fearful of his safety? I don't think that's look, I don't think Ange's done anything worth sacking, and I don't think Daniel Levy's done anything near worth invoking some fear mongering where you're going to suggest protesting outside his house or making his life uncomfortable. I just think that that's unreasonable behaviour. So if that's what happens next, then I'm 100% going to distance myself from anything that's Levy out.
I will listen. Let me. I will confirm right here, right now. There is absolutely no plans whatsoever to go anywhere near his house. In fact, my group that did everything prior and has done it before absolutely
of course I know
and distanced themselves from anyone that plans to go to his place of to his house. The training ground, Hotspur Way, Hotspur House, the inside and outside the stadium, fair goddamn game.
Yeah, 100%.
Peacefully, respectfully. So anyone thinking that, and especially, I've only got 5 minutes before I need to start work. The plan one coming up at the Liverpool game is going ahead and is obviously now getting a lot of traction. That is going to be planned and coordinated inside and outside the stadium. This is being done. I'm not going into all the details behind it. There's big accounts attached to this. The one thing that we had a big problem with last time is, was it the way we conducted ourselves? Was it the way I conducted myself? In some ways, I took responsibility for some of the things I did. The way I spoke to people, the way I tweeted. Sometimes I bit to trolls. Sometimes I went for bit. My errors. It's trial and error. This time being obviously spearheaded by Jay, and you've seen all the posters coming out and plans. This is being organised well. If you look at it from when we did it with Conte, compared to where we are now, we've gone backwards as a football club. Not forget business, as a football club, since Conte's sacking or even Conte's hiring, we've gone backwards. We have gone backwards, and fans are fed up, and rightfully so. If you're not, that's each to your own. But just because people are not happy doesn't mean that, and they don't voice their concerns, doesn't mean that the people that are very unhappy don't have the right to voice theirs. And this has been building. This has been building, whether it be results, whether it be style of play, whether it be first team ready-made players, whether it be Andrew adapting, whether it be ticket prices going up, wage bill going down, and all the financials that goes around, whatever may happen, it comes to the point now where Spurs fans are not wanting to go to games. Some people are throwing their season tickets away, not throwing it, giving up at the end of the season, or have been recently. People aren't taking their families, can't afford to take their families, and that's Premier League clubs all around, not just Tottenham Hotspur. And people have had enough. And after Bournemouth, there was like calls to action. Then Chelsea, obviously, and again, a lot of people said in the stadium, "That's it. I'm gonna voice my opinion. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that." From what I've heard, there was one very minute Levy out chant started, which didn't go anywhere, and some hard man decided to write in a toilet because it's all this. Well, this time, before the Liverpool game, an hour before, there is a planned protest outside. There will be big people, don't say big people, but big accounts have got behind it. Big accounts want to be a part of it. Media have been made aware of it. And now what it comes down to is doing it the right way. Doing it the right way. And as I've said many, many a time, there's been many a time I have been Levy out since Martin Yol. People know that. 17 years. My fury is unrivaled, apart from some extreme people. Some people were Pochettino being fired. Some were the Super League. Some are right now. I don't care. I'm not one of those told you so. Why aren't you listening to me? I don't care if you've just switched to become Levy out. Well done. Thank you. Welcome aboard. Come and join. And that is a numbers game. When we had 200 people maximum outside a club shop, does nothing. Since that time, if 400 people, and I'm just picking 400 at random, decide to come and now make that 600, that's a huge improvement. It's not where we need it to be. But if people have now started changing and want to actually voice an opinion, fair play to them. Welcome aboard. And thank you for coming to try and lend support to everyone. We're just getting to the point now where people have had enough. Will it force change? I'm a little bit with Sean. It'll be if he gets 4 billion, he pisses off. But what I will say with this, right, one second, Sean.
Go on. I just want to quickly ask Brian, just quickly on a lot of the sales, a lot of the deals we've heard that have been, in the offing. One of the pretenses for a lot of these deals is that Daniel Levy might remain as chairman. How would you feel about new ownership with Levy remaining as chairman? Because look, if you're an operator, you would probably, if you're a new incoming buyer of Tottenham, you would probably want Daniel Levy to remain as chairman because he's a brilliant for your business.
The perfect way I've said this, Simeon, I've said it before, is if I got a divorce from Milana, I'd want Daniel Levy to handle my divorce. Because I'd end up with everything. Even if I didn't have anything.
Not if he knew who you were, Brian.
I just don't want him.
You would end up with absolutely nothing.
I just don't want him anywhere near my football club. I don't see how we progress. Even with someone else's money, I don't trust him with. I honestly don't. But that's my opinion, and I've been this way for 17 years.
So it's more Levy than ENIC. If you had a choice between keeping ENIC or getting rid of Levy, or getting rid of ENIC and keeping Levy, what are you choosing?
I don't think ENIC had nothing to do with us anymore anyway. Joe Lewis has signed it all over. The main part of Joe Lewis is nothing to do with it anymore because of what went on. listen, I've just said I can't. I will never change on this stance. I can't. And Samir Leopard never changes spots. If other people think he can, fair play. But all I will say before I have to sign off and go to work is the protests are being done the right way this time, or not. They weren't done the wrong way. That's the wrong words. They're being better organised.
Brian,
They don't just turn up. Where are you? Do this, do that. They're being organised. There's been planning going on towards it. Hopefully people will come. Hopefully if it rains, people will. I mean if it's a torrential downpour, obviously it's a bust, isn't it? But the weather, just please get out there and support. If you actually do want change, and you have been on social media or in these chats or on these channels saying you Levy out and you want change, don't just say it. Go and lend a hand. Believe me, if I could get a flight to Canada to London for the weekend, I'd be on the next plane.
Right, now, can I offer you guys a bit of advice?
Go on.
One of the reasons why I always ask this question whenever I'm debating anybody, right, about Levy, and I do it all the time. I feel like there's a whole load of ambiguous answers around what it is that you really want. As someone who's a leader of that movement, I think you guys would be very clever if you actually articulated what change looks like, what sort of owner. You haven't got to name a name. I can appreciate the fact that you don't necessarily have a list in your back pocket of all the billionaires that are interested in sport, whatever, right? But I think that you would go some way to getting some more clarity around how people feel if you guys were to actually articulate what change looks like. What is it that you think will be different with the new owner? What is it that you will hold them accountable for? Rather than saying things like ambition, right, which is a nothing word. It doesn't mean anything. It's a like an intangible word that has nothing that can be attributed to it, and allows you or anyone else it affords you guys the opportunity to move the goalposts around what that looked like after the fact. Just like when it comes to the phrase, was he backed, right? Interpretive is something that can always be up to the interpretation. It's subjective, and naturally when things don't work out, when Tottenham don't win a trophy in the following season, it's used as another stick to bash the chairman with. I would argue that when it comes to transfer windows, people should say, this is what I expect spent, this is what I expect in terms of the numbers of players coming in, this is what will make me happy. Have that stuff dictated down, make it visible, articulated, and obviously something that can be there and referred back to before the fact, so that then later on you can't move the goal, not you personally, but anyone can't move the goalpost on what was or wasn't a good window. And the same comes with a new owner. Who is it that you want in terms of the profile of an owner? What does he look like? What are they into? Are they profit-based? Are they something else? Are they someone who's going to put their hand in their own pocket? Are they someone that's going to,
Sean,
maneuver?
I'm going to have to stop you there for a second because Brian really desperately needs to go.
Yeah,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Just find a way to articulate that, and I think you're going to a lot of hearts and minds.
To get to work and walk down the hallway, so I've got to log in and everything. But guys, thanks for having me on. Everyone in the chat,
Nice one, Brian.
have a great day. Sean, good to see you. Ben and Sim brothers, love you dearly. Everyone have a great day. Speak to you later.
Nice one.
Big up, Brian.
I think Sean makes some good points, though, when it comes to specificities, as he would say, about what people would want.
I just think there's a desperate need for people to be right. I think it's human nature. I'm not criticising anybody for the ability, for the wish, the desire to say, I'm right, they're wrong, whatever. I get it. But in terms of when it comes to what I hear in the arguments against Daniel Levy and the things that they want from the next guy, I don't hear any actual specifics of what it is that they're looking for. And I think that when that day comes where there is a new owner, unless those things are clear, then there'll always be the opportunity to move the goalposts after the fact. And I don't think that's reasonable if you're so vociferous in your distaste for this current guy, who I haven't really heard, as I said before, consistent and logical arguments that can test water, that can hold water when you peel the onion back and look beneath the surface. I don't hear it enough. But what I would get more on board with the story if I could actually hear a profile of a chairman in which these guys actually want that can do things within the rules that are meaningfully different to Daniel Levy, that don't start and stop with the words that are intangible in their definitions, like ambiguous or passion or those sorts of things. Say something specific, and I'll address it, and I'm happy to to give you the credit of whether that's a good idea or
What
otherwise.
do you mean, Sean, by moving the goalposts? Who moves goalposts in terms of
Everybody
in
moves
terms
goalposts.
of what? What's an example?
It doesn't matter what the debate is. Everybody moves the goalposts after the fact, because in this community, in the YouTube space, it's a competitive field of people that want to be right. Egos leads the way. So people always, like, I hear it in debates about whether players are good enough, right? Someone will say something. Sava and Arian had a great debate on your show a couple of days ago. The amount of goalpost moving on both sides was incredible, right? They would say a point, the other person would sort of debunk it, and then as soon as it was debunked, they would then move the conversation to a different point so that they could wiggle themselves out of the fact that on that particular notion, that guy had a gotcha. And it was both of them were doing it to each other, right? So no disrespect, I get it. It's human nature. You don't want to be wrong, especially on camera. But like, that's why I think that, first of all, like, diluting the ego is necessary, but also I think that it's just better to say what it is specifically that you want. And if you don't know what you want, then you shouldn't be as angry with what you have. And if you do know what you want, then let's hear it. But I don't know. All I hear is other than him, not him. Levy out is not the solution. The solution is who in, not a name. I can forgive you for not knowing the billionaire's name. I can get past that. But what does it look like? And passion is not an answer. Ambition is not an answer.
People want football to be a bigger priority than what it is right now at this football club.
And how does that look? Tell me what that looks like, and I'll get on board it.
Well, I think it looks like when you're looking at all the revenues coming in from all different various sources, from NFL to concerts to player sales to whatever it may be, the stadium, for it to be more funneled into the footballing side of the business. And I don't think it really is. You're looking at big kind of revenues or big money spent on transfers. Right? 50 million Brennan Johnson, 65 million Solanke, but that's just not measured in terms of the wages that we're spending. And you can spend that kind of money, but I don't think the ambition is there to take us to where these fans actually want to go. I think the ambition of this football club is just to bring in Champions League revenue. I think that's the goal here, and people want the goal to be a bit higher than that.
So what does that look like? So specifically, so you're saying that it's money spent. So £400 million in 18 months is unambitious
in terms of wages, yeah.
Wait, okay, again, why does wages matter? If you've got the calibre of the player...
Because the calibre of player is going to be brought in via the wages that he's on.
No, but not if the only way that would make sense... You can spend
50 million on a player, right? You can spend 50 million on one player and 50 million on another player. It's more than likely the player that's going to come in on 150 grand as opposed to 100 grand or below 100 grand, the one at 150 grand a week is going to be a lot better calibre of player.
But who is it that we've missed out on for £50 million that we could have got for 150 and we went in a different direction and got Johnson instead? And why was that? And how do you know that to be the case?
Well, I think in the summer it was clearly evident that Ange wanted someone in the 25 or the 23 in the mid-20 bracket, like a Pedro Neto, like a Eberechi Eze, like someone of this calibre of player to come in. And we ended up with Wilson Odobert, and Archie Gray and a Lucas Bergwijn and of these old.
165 grand a week.
Yeah, I even heard from someone, from Paul O'Keefe or someone, that we're not even paying him that much, Timo Werner. And it's a stopgap anyway, so let's hope we can bring in someone of that ilk when Timo does leave.
Right, but again, the Wilson Odobert thing wasn't a £50 million player, was it? How much did Wilson Odobert cost?
25.
Right, so there's not a comparison. So if it's the Brennan Johnson thing you're talking about, again, listen, I'm all for... I'm not in any way, shape or form suggesting that I'm happy with the transfer policy. Well, I said earlier, I think that it's a mismatch of it doesn't make sense to me that this guy, Ange, is so heavy on this relationship with mentality monsters, and yet is happy to be on board 18-year-olds as a transfer process. It doesn't make sense because by the age of 18, your frontal cortex isn't even developed yet, so you can't be a mentality monster. So I completely agree with you that there's a mismatch in logic in it, but in terms of the specifics around how do we know what we do or don't know regarding the transfer policy, it's all hearsay, and I don't know how else you judge the guy or hold him accountable other than take the guy at his word, or if you don't, then you're calling him a liar, and that's Ange saying, was he okay or not with the transfers that we have, and he said he was.
Do you genuinely believe that he was, though? Do you genuinely believe that he was happy with what we brought in?
I probably not. I probably would say I think he. Again, I 100% find it strange that he was okay with such a youth-focused approach, but if he holds the mentality argument to such high regard. But what I can't forgive then is why he would sign up to a club who has made it abundantly clear that that is the transfer policy of the football team at the moment. Right, so if you can't have your cake and eat it, you can't blame Daniel Levy for hiring a manager who then you discredit his answer regarding whether he's happy with the transfer window or not, because he himself signed up for a club knowing full well that he was going to walk into that transfer policy. It's either on Ange or it's not on Daniel Levy, is it? Daniel Levy says, like, you're the guy, but this is the terms, this is the process, right? But if Ange is okay with that to sign the contract and get paid his money, then he can't, Sean, and he's lying to the media. That doesn't make any sense to me.
We bought Archie Gray 40 million. We're paying him apparently 75 grand a week. Like, is that not a conscious decision? Like, we're not paying him nothing. Well, that's not an insignificant fee. So surely that's a player we really wanted.
Yeah, Premier League minute. Never, not one Premier League minute. Getting paid 75 grand a week and 40 million. That guy better become a world-class player. Otherwise, like, we have royally screwed up there. And again, I don't think Daniel Levy's not the guy that understands that Archie Gray's going to make it or not. Daniel Levy is the ear that listens to people like Johan Langer on that regard, right? So
but Sean, we talk about Ange and maybe coming under false pretenses. This happens under every single manager. It happened with Conte, it happened with Jose Mourinho, and now it's happening with Ange Postecoglou. None of these managers, in my opinion, in my belief, signed up for what they actually got through this football club.
That's one interpretation, right? But
do you not believe that though?
I don't know. I think that you have to challenge the narrative. You have to scrutinise the motivations. Antonio Conte got paid £15 million a year. £15 million a year. Think of that, right? Mm-hmm. Ridiculous amount of money, more than most players in world football get paid. And what did he do?
He was second in the league, wasn't he? In terms of price paid for manager.
Behind Pep, right? And what did he do? Well, he got us into the top four once. And then he complained as soon as it went wrong. That guy only has experience working, like similar to Pep in that regard. Most of his experience comes in working with the best squads, the best teams in the best leagues, right? But Tottenham is this enigma of a unit where the fans, the expectation, the stadium, it all looks like we're a top tier team. But in reality, through no fault of Daniel Levy, because he had the audacity to get us in that. If you go with the argument of the buck stops at the top, it's his effort. You credit him with the bad, you credit him with the good. That's the rules of logic, right? If the buck stops at the top, then he got us into a position where you have the audacity to consider title challenges as reasonable. And for me, I don't know if it necessarily is when you consider the caliber of what you're competing against all the time. There's no other league like it. And is there an argument that the last 5 years we've regressed? It's not even an argument, it's a fact. We have. But I would say it's more around the progression of other teams to come and be an ever-present part. Aston Villa, certainly absolutely part of the story now. Newcastle United, Brighton, right? West Ham made a little bit of movement in there for a while. It's difficult. It's easy to go from 12th to 7th. It's difficult to go from 6th to 1st. And that's the struggle that Tottenham have to face when you have an owner
at least be a bit competitive. Be a bit competitive. Liverpool were able to do it. Arsenal have been able to do it.
Again, and all they're the big teams that always have. They are the big teams that have always been more successful. There is not another. If there was like 4 or 5 teams that you could point to that had won more trophies than Tottenham, that have traditionally been the same as or less successful than Tottenham, I would say there's a lot more merit to it. But when you actually scrutinise the data, there's only 2 teams that have won 70% of all of the trophies in the last 25 years, or 65%, and 90% of trophies goes to 5 teams. The 2 teams that came along and bought their success before the rules were put in place to stop other teams doing it, and the 3 teams that have always done it: United, Arsenal and Liverpool. It's not a coincidence to me that Villa haven't done anything, Everton, Newcastle, nobody else. Tottenham are just one of 12. There's only 12 teams that have won anything. The only other standout is Leicester, and they got relegated 2 years after they won the league.
Forget winning. I'm talking about just being competitive and actually looking like, we're on the right path. We haven't done that.
That's not the sort. That's again, it's a goalpost movement, mate. Because this is what this whole story started with Romero.
It's not a goalpost movement because I never mentioned winning anything on this stream. This is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about
Romero did.
We started a competitive team.
We started this conversation with Romero's comments around whether or not he's right to call out Daniel Levy because he thinks that we should be a title challenge every year. And either he is delusional around the history of Tottenham Hotspur and what is reasonable, or he's got an agenda and a motivation to either get himself ready for a nice transfer away that will be far easier to achieve if Daniel Levy doesn't like him. he's not an idiot, or at least his agent isn't an idiot if that's his end game, right? Or he genuinely thinks that we should be there, in which case you shouldn't be pointing the finger at the person who, by his own logic, is responsible for putting us in that position in the first place. It doesn't hold water. It's just a logical fallacy.
It's an illusion, this football club. You walk into that stadium, you walk into that training ground, and you think, bloody hell, this team must be fighting up there for title. They've got the best facilities in the world. And it just doesn't relate to what's going on the pitch on a consistent basis.
So because we have a stadium that looks nice and was the most recent built, we therefore, by extension, have to be competing with City.
Isn't that what it was there for?
The goal, yeah.
Well, in terms of a revenue generator, it has been though. There's no argument that anyone who says
we're
that
not
it hasn't
anywhere
been
close. We're actually regressing
in terms
since
of
the
generating
stadium.
the money. The point of a chairman is not to deliver success, is to deliver the resources for success for the people that are better experts at the job of delivering the success.
He micromanages everything around the club.
Says who? You don't know that, mate. That's
do know
hearsay.
that. It's a fact. It's not hearsay.
It is hearsay. It's 100. So you
saw
know
it in
exactly.
the Amazon doc. We saw it in the Amazon doc, didn't we? He was just everywhere, isn't he? He's in the players' lounge. He's having.
There's no other manager. There's no other chairman. Surely that just sits in the lunchroom with the players.
He took a step back when Scott Munn came in. Supposedly.
Who knows? I don't know. This is what I 100% acknowledge that all of the things that you guys say could be true. But I'm not going to sit here and just take your word for it because I don't know, and I know you don't know either.
Well, that's what journalists report. That's what
they
lot
don't
of people
know.
report.
They don't know it either.
They get it from insiders. I mean, you've got to take something.
And where's their agenda? That's the point I'm making. Scrutinise the motivation.
Why would they lie about Levy being a micromanager?
I remember people saying, you know what, you want to find out about Daniel Levy, go and read Glenn Hoddle's book. What, the guy that failed to deliver success?
I'm talking about the staff. I'm talking about their staff and stuff that they're inside the club that they've been reported.
You can't be that naive. You can't be that naive. Everyone's got. I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm just saying that we don't know. We don't know.
All right, Sean. I think let's leave it there. But
should we go through some super chats?
I just want to go through the super chats just before we finish. Howie EIS says, my 4 favourite Spurs casters. We've got to back Ange and he'll be fine. The revolving door is a disaster. Look, as much as I've criticised Ange over the past week, and I've heavily criticised and questioned the path that we're going on and questioned if he's the right man, I do tend to agree with that sentiment. I do think the revolving door is a disaster.
We don't ever see a project through.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think if Spurs genuinely believe, and if the players genuinely believe that this guy's the right man, then it's something then I've got to get behind.
I was thinking about last night. There was one thing you said yesterday, which I was thinking about. You said, I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. I don't see where the program. Well, I don't see any light. And I was thinking, like, it's because we've never seen any light as a fan base. We don't see light. Yeah, but we never won anything. Well, we never
light at the end of the tunnel.
No,
though.
but we never saw winning. We never actually got there. We don't know what that looks like.
That's not what light at the end of the tunnel is. Light at the end of the tunnel is seeing a progress to that path.
Yeah, but everyone talks about trophies. That's the one thing everyone talks about. No one talks about top 4. Everyone talks about winning.
Yeah,
something.
but we were on the cusp of greatness under Pochettino.
I get that. But we've never seen a winning team.
No, it's true. We haven't seen a winning team, but we've seen light at the end of the tunnel. Is my point.
And under Poch, he finished. I know it went a lot better in his second season, but he also had a lot of difficulties early on as well. Like, I wouldn't. Obviously, this is a lot worse than that, but we could easily, have a better second half of the season. That's not the point. But we've never seen a team win things, and that's like we don't know what that looks like at the start of that.
Something you said yesterday as well. I was thinking about it a lot. Something you said yesterday about a lot of people's anger might be displaced, whether it be where it's coming for Ange and where it should be directed, or where they should be directing it at the ownership. 100%. And I think that's very much where I stand as well. And I think I have displaced a lot of anger towards Ange in the past week, where it should be directed more at the ownership, in my opinion. However, I still think Ange is very culpable as well for a lot of the results that we've got this season. So, look, I'm gonna. If the players and the ownership and everyone within the club really want to back Ange, then I'm gonna back it as well. Mr. Box Office TV with a super chat. He says, Sean, you got an agenda. Get me on to debate him another time.
Another time, not now.
Brian,
Anytime,
get him.
Thomas.
He is having a go at you, you know. He's having a go at you know who.
Who's you know who?
I don't know.
Oh, Stelios. Yeah.
Ah,
Oh, is that his name?
Honestly, like I think basically I went in with Johnny yesterday, and basically called out Stelios because I think that his approach to content when it comes to the kind of celebratory pat on the back every time we lose and goes after fans, I'm not a fan of it. I'm not going to go about it into detail here, but in the video yesterday I did go in on him. And afterwards, it came across maybe that I was saying about all Levy outers. I'm not. I 100% support anybody's take. I think that every opinion is valid, and I think that everyone's right to protest is absolutely should be taken advantage of in a free society. And I always support everyone, regardless of their take. I just don't particularly like or have time for that particular guy's approach to finger pointing. That's all I ever.
Mr. Box Office says you've got an agenda, mate. Levy out people don't have an agenda. You have an agenda.
Man, everyone is a grift. Everyone has got a grift of some sort. My grift is Bugsy Malone. I realised a long time ago that you put a dog in a video and you're going to get a lot of people that want to watch it, right? So everyone's got their own little thing.
What I find funny about that Super J is Levy out by its very definition is an agenda. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Everyone's got an agenda.
Yeah.
Everyone has got an agenda. It's life. That's the way it works.
Philly Deli's bro says, speaking constructively, what can the club do to adjust its wage structure to afford new world-class talent in the payroll, just outside investment, or the board changing what's acceptable on the books?
Yeah, so one of the options
The
would be
wage structure at the moment is 200 grand a week is the ceiling for a base wage, and we have a bonus structure, heavily incentivized bonuses, which we don't really know what they are, but we hear about them.
I mean, we only heard about them really with Harry Kane. I don't think we've ever heard about them.
Yeah, but I'm sure
with anyone else.
No, Danny Rose said like everyone has bonuses. I'm sure they all have heavily incentivized bonuses in
I've seen ex-players talk about they've only had bonuses if they beat a top 6 club by more than 3 goals or something stupid like that.
Yeah, but look, Kane, I'm sure if Kane had a goal bonus, I'm sure the other strikers also have a goal bonus. Like, I'm sure everyone has heavily incentivized bonuses. That's the wage structure of this team.
But we don't know that.
No, it is. We know that. There's bonuses. There's obviously bonuses. Harry Kane had that.
There's obviously going to be bonuses in there, but obviously like the specifics of each one is going to be down to the client and the agent, right?
Why would they give a bigger goal structure to Kane than they would to a striker who's less likely to score goals? They want to incentivise him to score.
Because they've been begging Harry Kane to stay for years.
No, they're going to incentivise the strikers to score.
But Kane's bonuses would have been more than anyone else's.
I'm sure
because of who he
is just as much as Kane's for the goal bonus.
I disagree.
It's going to depend on
I'm sure it's high. I'm sure there's a high goal bonus for Solanke, put it that way.
It's 100% going to be unique. Ben, I'm with you on this one. I think that the agent is going to sit down and they're going to figure out what sort of level of client are they working with, right? Does the footballer want to be at the club? Is he pushing for a move? How valuable is he? All those things are going to come into it. And contracts are not signed very quickly, are they? Those negotiations happen back and forth. I want 10% per goal, or I want 20%. Would it mean that 14, 16, 15? There's all that stuff goes back and forth. I'm sure they're all going to be unique contracts. But the structure of the deal, there's wiggle room to make differences within it. But look at Liverpool, right? Liverpool lose more money or make less money in a year when they win the Champions League than they do in the year when they don't, because they have a deliberate structure that incentivises outperformance. And so, to Liverpool's bosses, it's worse if they win the Champions League. To Liverpool fans and to the players, it's fantastic. And so that I don't know what the right combination to answer that guy's question. I don't know what the right construct of a sort of base plan is around how do you incentivize performance. But that stuff is obviously an ongoing thing. But maybe Tottenham have got it wrong. Again, who knows, right? Who knows?
He sent another one saying, big up Daigle, what message can all Spurs fans unite behind right now to pressure the board to go big on January signings? I mean, I don't think anyone can pressure the board at this point to go big on January signings, but
Look, we're on our feet at the moment. If they can't see that, then I mean, look, we've done it. We've been here before with this board. I remember that January we had Kane and Son out for 3 months, and they brought in Bergwijn, and they didn't really get a replacement. Or they didn't get someone to come in. I think clearly this squad needs help in January. We've got a lot of injuries. We need more quality, and we need cover. And we're out on our feet at the moment. I think, look, the noises are the board acknowledge it, but whether they act on it, there's nothing that we can do to force them to do it.
And he sends another one saying, fan ownership is the solution. Sean, are you backing a We Are Tottenham TV consortium? You going to join us?
I would.
You can be the
100%.
treasurer, Sean. You can be the treasurer.
I think that those sorts of ideas are really nice, and they work in some places. Germany is the 50 plus 1% rule. It is a model that I think has a lot of value in it. It's often seen in Brazil. I think Venezuela, Argentina has it. I think there's lots of places in South America that has that model. It just requires everybody else in the league to go to the same thing. It wouldn't work if only Tottenham had a 50 plus 1% rule and you were competing with Chelsea and City, who have a different set of criteria. So it is a nice idea. I'm not sure how it works on a competitive level against other European teams. Bayern Munich seems to be obviously the only beneficiary of it really in German football relative to everybody else. But long story short, yeah, it's a nice idea. I just think it would require everyone to get on board it, and there's too many powerful figures that would say no chance because they see the golden goose that is football ownership in the long run, especially under a new TV broadcasting model that would go to a Netflix of sport that's definitely going to come in the next 10 years. That's the big money maker for all these guys. That's why they're all here. They're waiting for that thing.
Ryan Isaacs, member for 31 months, says Levy out. And last but not least, Lily White's Indius. This is one for you, Sean. He says, the Nirvana logical fallacy, when a person ignores or dismisses an argument or criticism because no solution is being offered. That's what Sean is doing, it seems.
Yeah, all logical fallacies doesn't necessarily a logical fallacy doesn't necessarily equate to a bad argument. It's just there's a name that's attributed to, it's a nomenclature that's attributed to something where there's no better offering. But ultimately, like, tell me why that a problem is a solution unless you offer a solution, and you haven't. No one has. I don't hear it. I hear it all the time. If you're someone that spends all day long, every day, talking about Daniel Levy and how bad he is, like, make your argument, steel man your argument. I'm talking to Brian, I'm talking to the guys at Tottenham Away, Hotspur, whoever, all these guys, all these channels out there that are 100% on that side of the oche. This is not a criticism. I support your right to go after what you want. But do yourselves a favour and steel man the argument. If this is your 99% of your content, go and research and find out who is the perfect candidate. Don't say, it's not my job to figure it out. Why not? Go and figure it out.
Sean, is there not arguing to say, like, if I see a helicopter land crashing into a building, I don't need to be a pilot to know that you shouldn't be doing that? You know what I mean? Yeah,
but you do need to be a pilot to know that who you want to fly the next helicopter out of there.
Yeah, just get another pilot.
So any pilot will do. That's what we're doing here. Is it?
Anyone helicopter.
No, you know what, Finn? That's a brilliant sub. I love that, mate. Is that where we're at? Is that what Levy means? Is that what Levy out really means? I don't care who, just anyone but him. And if that's the case, then I am 100% never going to be on board it, because there's so many versions of a future that doesn't involve him that are worse.
People don't think about the possibility of a new owner and it getting worse. I think people don't.
And that's a reality.
It is a reality, because you look at the guy that was, linked. It turned out to be rubbish last week. Was it the American geezer? I can't remember his name off the top of my head, and he probably would have been even worse than Levy.
The
American Daniel Levy, they were calling him.
Yeah, it was a nonsense story, but there's plenty of owners. Like, there's plenty of real-time examples. Look at Everton. Perfect example. Right? Perfect example.
But also, Sean, in terms of fan pressure and in terms of what we were speaking about earlier, in terms of can fans pressure change at the top, right? I was looking at what Arsenal were doing, and they were very unhappy with Stan Kroenke and Josh Kroenke and all that. And I believe they actually did pressure change at the top. They didn't pressure him to sell, didn't pressure him to get out, but they definitely pressured him to change his model and change the way he was working. So maybe it could be the same here. And I feel like, regardless of what you feel of Daniel Levy, if he was to make the changes to really make us competitive again at the top, I don't think many people would have too many problems with him.
Well, what changes? They stuck with Arteta, whereas they sacked it.
No, but they started giving them a lot more money as well, and
we spent
released more
400
funds.
million.
Yeah, but you look at the wage structure from before that moment until after that moment as well.
If I look at their wages, I think only 2 players in their squad don't earn 100 grand. Everyone earns at least 100 grand in their squad.
Yeah,
That's true.
but before that moment, I think their wages were quite low.
I don't know. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know. I haven't seen it. Maybe. I don't know.
No, it's true. I've looked into it.
Okay.
Yeah. Look. I mean, Arsenal. The Kroenke story is again misunderstood. I think if you look into it, you'll find that the extra investment, they took the opportunity to. They haven't got the same amount of debt that we have, right? So they've taken on additional debt to at different interest rate levels to what we've taken on to be able to put that stuff in. But ultimately, that money is still owed back to Stan Kroenke. And again, you can't just, under the current rules, you can't just inject money into the club if you want to, without any limits to it. You have to pay it back. You have to. All these things are considerations that I know that it can be frustrating to hear someone say the things that stop you thinking that this guy, this half visible, half intangible guy at the top is the problem, the root cause of all of your issues. And if we only got rid of him, it would be so much better. We could spend £10 billion if we found the right investor that had a disregard for money. It just doesn't work that way. And if you're not familiar with the way that it does work, that's why I kind of feel like I should take the stance that I do. I never came into Tottenham content wanting to be the guy that is thought of as the defender of Daniel Levy. I'm not. I'm the defender of the reality, because I don't think people understand, and it's no fault of theirs, but they don't understand how that side of the business side of it works. And if there's no recognition of that part, I think it's incumbent upon someone who does have a platform and does understand it to say those things. It doesn't mean that I think Daniel Levy's the best option. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't welcome a new owner, but let me know who that person is and I'll scrutinise it and figure out whether I think he's a valuable attribution or otherwise. And if
I heard Elon Musk is looking to get into football.
Right. Well, I mean, just like tell you what he would do is find efficiencies. Right. He's an efficiency monster. But whether or not his decision around just paying someone whatever they want to come in is, I don't know. I don't know. I think that the nuances of what happened with the Todd Boehly story are so specific with Chelsea and Russia and COVID and the Ukraine war, all that stuff, that won't ever be recreated. Look at Newcastle. They have all the money in the world and they can't spend it. Just be careful what you wish for, because new doesn't always mean better. That's all I'm saying. Let's figure out whoever these options are. Let's work together as a community to figure out whether or not they're better for Tottenham or otherwise. Because I think that Daniel Levy could be a lot better than he is, but he's not as bad as some of you think he is.
David says, Levy cutting Daigle's internet FFS, Levy out. And he also says, we need a proper one like United's. Show up, people. He's not talking about ownership, he's talking about protests.
Well, but let's talk about their ownership. Let's talk about that. So Jim Ratcliffe, how's that started? He's been an absolute disaster. He's walked in there and just ripped up the rule book, and in an effort to try to drive efficiencies, he's been attacked. That's not what they wanted. They spent all that time rooting for a new guy. He's made a worse first impression than Keir Starmer. I'm serious though. He has. He is what you might get as a Tottenham fan. So be careful what you wish for. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I guess he hasn't even been in the job a year yet.
Right. And what's he done so far that's been eye-wateringly optimistic? Nothing. What's he done that's given cause for concern to United fans? Loads and loads.
I don't really know what's been going on at United. I'm not informed on the situation, so I can't really comment.
Margin pressures, driving efficiencies, all those things that sound technical but ultimately mean less waste, more hard graft decision making around how you spend your money, which ultimately, from a fan's perspective, doesn't really answer the prayers of what they had hoped for from a new owner. That they don't already have from the Glazers. It's not been good. It's like you ask most United fans to understand it, that look into it, they're not impressed at all.
Well, I guess, Sean, we won't be making one of those old style thumbnails about you today, but thank you for coming on, Sean. Thank you for coming on. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. And do you want to let everyone can find him at Spurs Talk Show? Is it Spurs Talk Show TV? No, it's just Spurs Talk Show.
No, Spurs Talk Show. Yeah, Spurs Talk Show.
Yeah, I made that mistake at the beginning of the show, but yeah. tell the people what's coming up this week. Sorry about that, by the way.
That's all right. I didn't even notice. I wouldn't have. Now I've got a bone to pick with you after the fact. Yeah, you can find me at Spurs Talk Show, guys. Yeah, I'm trying to get back into it. Obviously, I'm going through some horrible things in my personal life. Also, for what it's worth, like I feel like I'm on edge right now. Like I'm, as a person, as a human, I am really, really wound up with all the things that are happening in my private life. And if I come across a little bit aggressive, I do apologise to you guys in the audience. I don't mean to be, but I have run out of patience, and my temper is on edge, and I'm kind of razor thin with certain things. So sometimes I kind of go off on one and let loose when that's a different version of me. But you can find me at Spurs Talk Show. Even if you disagree with me on Levy out on any particular topic, my version of style of content is to talk about both the A and the B, what's this side, what's that side. Let's talk about it together, and then I'll tell you where I land. I don't tell you how to feel. I'll just give you my options and then let you tell me how you feel in the comment section. So Spurs Talk Show is where you can find me. Appreciate you, boys. Love you guys. Thank you for having me.
Losing patience with everyone but Levy, it seems.
Absolute brilliant Spurs content, guys. So everyone do go and subscribe to Shawnee. The link is on the title of this live stream as well. So go and head over to Sean's channel, and we'll see you all very soon, people. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around for this an hour and a half. Lovely people. We'll see you all very soon. Like,